When a friend invites you to enjoy a cup of coffee, your friend, on some level, invites you into conversation. Inspired by the invitation of a friend to grab a cup of coffee, please consider this your invitation to join us on a journey to Germany, where you are sure to enjoy rich conversation stimulated by your encounters with history, religious ideas, culture, and cuisine. We believe that a meticulously planned itinerary with an appropriate level of built-in flexibility can provide the nuance that distinguishes a trip from a journey. For many fellow travelers, accepting our invitation to conversation in Germany becomes a spiritual and religious journey through church history. For other travelers, the journey tends to be an intellectual exploration of past human events and actions that nurtures a personal examination of who we are today. For still others, the journey becomes most vivid through rich conversation and a delectable taste of German culture and cuisine. Whatever you anticipate you will find most stimulating in your own experience of history, religious ideas, culture, and cuisine in Germany, an invitation to conversation extended over 500 years ago provides the fascinating context for what we hope will become your purposeful, personal, and memorable journey with us. About 500 years ago, an Augustinian monk, Martin Luther, who had been appointed to teach at a new university in Wittenberg, Germany, presented 95 theses intended to stimulate academic debate. In presenting his 95 theses, Martin Luther extended an invitation to conversation. A difficult, tense, perhaps strident conversation to be sure, but an invitation to conversation nevertheless. From the time Martin Luther presented his 95 theses, what happened and why in the European Reformations that unfolded beginning in the early 16th century has been the subject of much conversation ever since, especially among historians and people of faith. In the 19th century, during the European Enlightenment, a familiar or dominant narrative of the Protestant Reformation in Germany emerged. Among historians, this narrative featured an angry, albeit heroic monk, nailing an indictment, his 95 Theses, to the door of an irredeemably corrupt church. So dominant was this narrative account that for more than 150 years, and until fairly recently, university students were taught this story as the conclusive explanation of a decisive, sudden, revolutionary shift from a medieval to a modern world. Less than a generation ago, in our lifetime, historians determined that the Reformation was socially too narrow and geographically too small to continue as the explanation for a shift from a medieval to a modern world. One renowned German historian even declared, "We have lost the Reformation, which must no longer be studied as a historical reality of the 16th century, but as one of the great German myths." A visitor to Germany today might notice that the Reformation is presented as a social, cultural, and economic event, certainly not an inherently religious one. Although college students, with perhaps some rare exceptions, are no longer taught in Western civilization classes that the Reformation stands as the event that divides a medieval from a modern world, the Reformation remains relevant enough today that millions of people around the world continue to identify themselves and others as Lutheran. Our journey explores the ongoing relevance of the age of European Reformations for each of us as fellow travelers. People in the 16th century, during the Protestant Reformation in Germany, lived in an increasingly complex world that imposed questions remarkably similar to questions we face living in our own time. The places you will visit in Germany are carefully selected to form a narrative, to tell a fascinating story, steeped in encounters with history, religious ideas, culture, and cuisine, that invites conversation about who we are today in light of our distant past. Although each journey may vary in specific details, your purposeful journey will lead you to experiences that are fun, fascinating, and deeply profound. We will enjoy the festive atmosphere of a brewery and be confronted with the evil that took place at Buchenwald. We will engage life at a medieval monastery and experience worship in a 16th century church. We will explore castles and the city where Martin Luther was born and where he died. The journey will culminate with a day exploring one of the most interesting cities in the world, Berlin. Listen to a description of daily excursions offered by travelers on journeys past.
Each day began with a morning briefing or Morgenkurz, led by Pastor Mike Malone. During the Morgenkurz, each traveler was given a sheet highlighting the historical significance and contemporary relevance of what we would be seeing on our excursion that day. The ideas offered in the Morgenkurz were intended to stimulate conversation both on the journey among travelers and in conversations with others once travelers returned home. We spent a day in Wittenberg, where Martin Luther lived and worked most of his adult life. This visit prompted questions among travelers over why the Reformation occurred and how our interest in the Reformation has evolved or changed over the years. Our visit to Buchenwald seemed to be the most significant day of the journey for most travelers. Here, we were confronted unabashedly with Luther's despicable writings against the Jews, questions about what it means to live as a sinner and saint in the shadow of the cross, and how we should confront evil in the world. We traveled to Eisenach, where Luther translated the New Testament into German while living disguised as a knight. We considered the difference between us and the readers of the original Luther Bible.
We hope you will measure the quality of your journey not by the quantity of sights you see, but by the invaluable experiences you absorb. Your carefully choreographed itinerary will promote balance each day between a well-planned excursion and time to explore, to rest, to enjoy conversation with fellow travelers, or to reflect on your own.
Listen in on the conversation as travelers share.
The trip to Buchenwald was particularly impactful for me as I thought about the incredible disparity between the triumph of human spirit and the pit of human depravity, both palpable in my experience of Weimar. I actually changed my thinking. I came away with a new and clear perspective, a whole new paradigm.
The experience of Buchenwald with fellow travelers challenges us to think about how connections between all of Luther's ideas and my actions as a Christian come together. What should we be doing today with regard to our challenges today of, for example, Syrian refugees, war, and gross abuses of capitalism? What might we have done in the Reformation or living in Nazi Germany?
Beyond Buchenwald, the worship service at the city church in Wittenberg welled up feelings within me that were the most meaningful for me. Hearing, feeling, and singing in the church where Luther preached was very special.
This journey contributed positively to my sense of what it means to live as a contributing member of society 500 years after the Reformation by making me more aware of how currents and culture from all sides, history, theology, the arts, politics, and so on, in the 16th century might be illustrative of this epic's Reformation. I will be watching my own culture more critically.
Considering the complexities of the Reformation in context was truly life-changing for me, and helped put what being Lutheran means 500 years after the Reformation into perspective. I now have a more balanced understanding of Luther and his contribution to the Reformation.
Until the last day of your journey, you and your cohort of 12 to 24 fellow travelers will stay in one beautiful location at the Best Western Grand Premier Russischerhof in Weimar, Germany. Staying in one location for nearly all of our journey allows you and your fellow travelers to settle into a fascinating city long enough to become intimately familiar with German culture. Weimar also provides an excellent geographical base location for our daily excursions. On the last day of our journey, we transfer to the gorgeous Hilton Berlin so that you may experience one of the most captivating cities in the world today, Berlin. We believe that a meticulously planned itinerary with an appropriate level of built-in flexibility can provide the nuance that distinguishes a trip from a journey. That planning extends to dinners in Germany as leisurely, relaxing affairs in venues selected to provide delectable taste of German culture and cuisine. The European-linked dinners on your journey provide an ambiance to enhance rich conversation over all we experience that day. Your dining experiences will vary, almost to the point of being eclectic. You'll be treated to a brewery tour followed by a spread of locally produced German barbecue, bread, cheese, and of course, refreshing Lutheran tea. Dinners include a spectacular array of Thuringian cuisine in settings that may include a room constructed in 1534, or other restaurants that have been in operation for centuries. Rather than a trip led by a tour guide trained to disseminate information from a script, you will interact with an expert who will be available as a resource for as much depth as you desire, or to leave you to your own reflection and your interactions with fellow travelers. We will share the common experience of an itinerary crafted to form a narrative. We will share an itinerary. We hope the journey will be uniquely and memorably your own.
But it was actually perfect.
The schedule was really excellent in that we had structure every day, and so we were able to really kind of engage with the sites in a consistent and organized fashion.
I think it was a good balance because I was never exhausted.
Hearing Peter talk about growing up in East Germany was really powerful.
To say Buchenwald, didn't know what to expect before I got there. Have heard of the concentration camps most of my life and knew what took place there. There was enough of it left that you had a sense of what the camp had been like.
I loved Vestakober, it was fabulous, and the Wartburg. To walk in castles like that is amazing.
The greatest amount of fun was interaction with the people.
The communal meals that we had together were really fun.
Really enjoyed the trip to the brewery. It was our first activity together, and the food was amazing.
It is entitled Invitation to Conversation, and certainly the conversations that took place, whether they were on the bus or in the foyer lobby or afterwards in the bar area, it just united people and enhanced learning.
I very much appreciated the daily briefing and the questions to be thinking about that we got in the morning before we went to the various places, whether they were breweries or Buchenwald or a city tour or whether it was a Luther site.
Started out as strangers. We didn't finish that way. We finished as friends, and that was the conversation that we had.
Simply go. It is an intellectually learning experience, a spiritual experience, an emotional experience. It's just amazing.
Absolutely do it. You will not regret the time and effort and expense of participating in this experience. It is meaningful, it is fun, it is relaxing, and you'll come away with deeper relationships with the people that you travel with, whether you knew them in advance or not.
Like a friend who invites you into conversation over a cup of coffee, please consider this your invitation to conversation in Germany.